It's the 25th of June 2022. Mourners, including the Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, have gathered at the Accra International Conference Center for the memorial of the former president of the Sickle Cell Foundation, Professor Kweku Ohene-Frimpong. The Vice President had worked closely with the professor and other institutions to ensure the availability of hydroxyurea for the treatment of people with sickle cell disease in Ghana. Hydroxyurea is a medication for persons with SCD and was approved by the Food and Drugs Authority in 2018 for use by both adults and children in Ghana. Here at the memorial, the Vice President will announce that the National Health Insurance Scheme will now absorb the cost of all important medication for persons living with sickle cell disease.
Professor Ohene-Frimpong's concern for a lot of the children, because for him, the earlier we detected sickle cell, of course, the quicker it would be. So he wanted screening for all children, and this was the aim that he had. So as the agreement with Novartis to provide hydroxyurea free was coming to an end, he increasingly was pushing us to make sure that the National Health Insurance Scheme would cover hydroxyurea for our children. And we have continued to meet with it, and I am happy to say that the new, and in fact the old CEO, Dr. Lydia Selby, and the new CEO for NHIS, Dr. Okoboy, have made the commitment, and government in his memory was going to adopt hydroxyurea under the National Health Insurance Scheme for sickle cell sufferers.
I am now at the cafe at East Legon to meet with President of the Sickle Cell Association of the Greater Accra Regional Hospital, Victoria Awochumesi. She's a sickle cell disease advocate. Awo's daughter, Elisa Palmer, has been living with sickle cell for the past 15 years. She's also a sickle cell disease advocate. She says after she started taking hydroxyurea, she no longer frequents the hospital as it used to be, sometimes only once a year.
Before I started taking hydroxyurea, I would often get sick. Most of the time, I would be in the hospital very frequently. Any small thing could turn into a crisis, and I went through a lot of different things like bone crises and acute chest syndrome. I experienced a lot of things, and I went to the hospital multiple times a year, and sometimes I would be in the hospital for 2 weeks at a time. Now, I barely even go to the hospital, maybe once a year.
Her mother, Victoria Awochumesi, says a change in environment, climate, and rigorous exercise could trigger pain episodes and other complications of the disease.
And one thing about people with sickle cell disease is that, they could go from having a minimal crisis and then almost in an instant, it could become a major crisis, which is life-threatening. So to go from that to now being able to, participate in different activities and not have as many crises as you would, is such a blessing. So, you have people, maybe they go to the hospital, 5-6 times a month, every 2 months, to maybe going into the hospital once or twice every 3 months for a crisis, which sometimes might not even be related to sickle cell disease. It might be something else that they might be dealing with. So that is sort of how much hydroxyurea has improved the quality of life for people living with sickle cell disease. One particular thing that one thing that I think a lot of the kids can relate to was something like swimming, or weather changes. Before your child, if they have sickle cell disease, you have to be mindful of them, participating in any kind of swimming activity. Or when the weather changes, you have to be cautious of that.
The new president of the Sickle Cell Foundation, Peter Mensah, has a relative with sickle cell. He says persons living with the disease experience pain that can be unbearable.
My first son started feeling funny after 6 months. And so that took us into hospital, and I met other parents who also had children who had been diagnosed with sickle cell. And there was discussion about coming together as parents of children with sickle cell so that we could present one voice to help make things work out for them. If you know sickle cell very well, it is a condition that comes with a lot of pain and a lot of hospitalizations. So people or children who have sickle cell would normally find themselves in hospital every 2 weeks. They come home for 2 weeks and they are back in the hospital for 2 weeks. So that was the pattern. Quite apart from that, there was the issue of medication, difficulty in getting medication because for some people it was so expensive they couldn't buy the appropriate medication. So until hydroxyurea came, the standard of care for children with sickle cell was very, very, very disjointed.
Chief Executive of the National Health Insurance Scheme, Dr. Bernard Okoboy, says persons living with sickle cell disease are exposed to all kinds of health hazards, but hydroxyurea helps them to avoid the sickling experience.
We have a significant number of people in this country who are sickle cell patients. Those with full-blown sickle cell, that is SS or SC, usually have some unique challenges. Without intervention or proper medication, they experience a lot of pain in their body, what we refer to as crisis moments in the ordinary man's language. But actually they experience the pain because the blood cells clots and prevents blood from flowing to certain parts of their body. And so beyond the pain, they also suffer some tissues of their body dying, which can lead to, if the tissues die in the brain, that is a stroke. If the tissues die in the liver, that can lead to liver cirrhosis or damage to the liver. If it's the kidney, they get kidney failure. So they are exposed to all kinds of hazards. But research has shown that hydroxyurea, if given to sickle cell patients, helps them to avoid this sickling experience. Once it's sickling, the experience where their blood cells, their red blood cells, instead of being in a very nice shape to carry oxygen, folds up and becomes sickled and blocks their blood vessels. So this medication is a life-changing medication. It does not only increase the number of years or days they spend on the earth, but it also improves the quality of their life.
I had a good friend who's passed away now. He was, one of the leading people, if not the leading person, as far as sickle cell management and treatment and so on, researching in Ghana is concerned. And he had come to my office and made the case that, there is this new drug called hydroxyurea, which it would be very, very important if sickle cell sufferers in Ghana got access to it on the NHIS. They brought in the sickle cell this drug initially for free, but it was only for a limited period. And so once we had that period expire, how are the poor people, because this drug is not cheap, so how are poor people who are dealing with sickle cell going to obtain this drug? And so we engaged the Ministry of Health, the National Health Insurance Service, Dr. Okoboy and his team, and we said, look, let's put this drug on the NHIS. And I think that we were able to make the case, and I'm very happy for sickle cell sufferers that hydroxyurea was finally being put on the NHIS, and government is very happy about it too.
Victoria Awochumesi says the introduction of hydroxyurea has had a tremendous improvement in the health of persons living with sickle cell. She says many of them who are on the medication now can carry out their daily activities without any fear of experiencing pain.
Now, because they're on hydroxyurea, we don't have to worry about such things. Before, simple things like having a toothache could become a serious health, life-threatening issue. Just from a toothache, the infection of a toothache, because the child has sickle cell, it could lead to other complications, and it's usually an instant. It could go from the child just experiencing a fever and an achy tooth to being in the ICU or on life support. That is just how serious sickle cell crisis can be. So to go from that and now being on hydroxyurea, where you don't have to worry about such things, such crisis, such sort of everyday activities that children normally participate in, it's so refreshing and just heartwarming that we are able to actually witness sort of the quality of life that hydroxyurea has brought to our children, especially who are living with sickle cell disease.
Awochumesi says the sickle cell community owes the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, a debt of gratitude for helping with the introduction of hydroxyurea in Ghana and going a step further to ensure it's covered by the National Health Insurance Scheme.
It was a blessing. It was a lot of work that at the time Professor Hine Frimpong, who has passed, worked very hard with Novartis, the Vice President, NHIS establishment, to make this possible. So we're very grateful to all of them, from Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the Vice President, to Dr. Okuboy, and everybody else who has been part of making this a reality. And it's been such a great help that we now have the medication covered by the NHIS.
Well, I don't think it's thank you to me. It's thank you to the government of Nana Addo Dankwa akufo-addo for making this happen. We are just vehicles for making things happen, but he is the ultimate person who makes things happen.
President of the Sickle Cell Foundation, Peter Mensah, says hydroxyurea is a lifesaver.
The Vice President, as part of our advocacy, we pushed for the adoption of hydroxyurea on the national drug list. And we routed it through the office of the Vice President. And he quickly jumped onto it and pioneered that push to have the medication on the national drug list. And that was the extent of his involvement in getting it done for us. It's a big game changer. It's a big game changer. Like I said before, if you can have a better quality of life, it means that you can play with your friends, you can have a normal growing up life. Your parents are also free.
Dr. Bernard Okuboy says the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, played a significant role in the introduction of hydroxyurea and its inclusion in the list of medication covered by the NHIS.
I mean, he has a lot of sympathy for people who are disadvantaged in code or who are vulnerable in code by a situation which is no fault of theirs. So a sickle cell patient really didn't do anything to become sickle cell. It's the parents that were carriers or had sickle cell and was born like that. So it could have been yourself and myself. So if by no fault of theirs, they are born with a condition which makes life sometimes very difficult. And fortunately, a condition that we can do something about. The Vice President doesn't understand why we sit like we are helpless. And that is what made him really challenge the National Health Insurance Authority, that you have to explore ways to get hydroxyurea.
The promise to make hydroxyurea accessible to all has been fulfilled, and the sickle cell community is now enjoying the relief.